the Evolution Security Podcast. All right, everybody, welcome to the Evolution Security Podcast. I am Aaron Davis, half of the Tactical Twins. Eric, once again, Joe Biden and his generals are calling the shots for Eric this evening. Unfortunately, even though he is not in the Army, they still push him around a little bit. But we are glad anyway to be here with our good friend Tim Herron. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. How about you?
I am doing great. Awesome being able to talk to you because when our guests hear more about what we're going to talk about, I'll delve into that. But real quick, just some quick admin stuff. Now, October 28th, I'll be teaching our Evolution Security Defensive Pistol 1 class here in the Tulsa area. Go ahead and go on to Eventbrite, and you can hunt that down and come and train with us. It's going to be a blast, a great concealed carry focused class. And we want to implore you as listeners to go out to iTunes and rate and review our show. And then, of course, share the show to your friends and tell them they can listen to it anywhere there are podcasts. You can get our show. So we really appreciate the help in getting the show out there. Now, Tim, I recently, after going through surgery, our audience knows that I've been recovering from neck surgery. I don't know if you can see my scar there.
Oh, yeah.
And I've been getting my strength back. I just got released about a month ago to shoot matches and go to jiu-jitsu and stuff. And I started shooting and then realized that my next match, it's like, man, I'm going to start hitting a match every weekend. Now, I know for heavy hitting competition shooters, especially in our area, they're at every daggum match that's available.
Right.
But I couldn't think of anyone better to talk to about my new kind of switch in focus in basically making competition my number one focus right now than you. And what was cool was I believe in early August you had a match skills clinic. Is that something you're starting to do on a continual basis?
I've been teaching match skills clinics, which is kind of a one-day class, either in conjunction with like one of my flagship 2-day class, practical performance, or like in conjunction with like maybe another 1-day like diagnostics and like handgun diagnostics and foundations class. So actually, match skills clinics are kind of where I got my start. From a teaching aspect, I started doing those kind of like 4-hour or 6-hour kind of classes in conjunction with a match, and open it to about 5 to 8 students.
Oh, that's
and we'd
cool.
work throughout an entire day. So it's something I've been doing basically since I started teaching in 2015, and it's kind of, I don't want to say they've taken a back seat. They're just obviously it's a little harder to justify the travel, to go to a place for like just a 1-day kind of match skills clinic, unless you price it, unfortunately, so exorbitant to cover the cost of travel and hotel that, then students are now paying like $500 or $600, for a 1-day 8-hour class. And that's just not conducive to good business. It doesn't make good sense to do that. So
Sure.
It's something I've always offered, and it's definitely something that more people started to hear more about again. And it's become more popular again here just in the past, year and a half, 2 years of time.
Oh, cool. Well, it sounds like something I would be interested in if you ever come near me or I'm out that way. Now, so what I would like to at least, again, so we're going to focus a lot on competition, the benefits of competition, but I wanted to start out with a story, and it's nothing new. The the instructors out there that are for some reason anti-competition. It's just kind of goofy. But I've got one story where it was super cool. My wife hunted down a local class that she wanted to take. And I thought, hey, that's cool. I'll go with her because she found this class she wanted to take.
Sure.
And it was put on by a local ex-law enforcement guy. And right off the bat, he made it clear that he wasn't too cool on competition. And it was funny because at one point he was watching me shoot and pointed out to the rest of the class, "Hey, you can tell this guy's a competitor. Look at his slide staying flat when he shoots." I'm like, okay, that's kind of, you're contradicting yourself there, but I'm kind of digressing a little bit about the way he taught the class, and this is where I like being able to offer the classes that we offer at a local level, because a lot of local classes are like this one that we went to.
Mm-hmm.
All these people that are barely above beginning students, and the main parts of the class were, shooting between our legs supine and doing tourniquets and then shooting outside of vehicles and getting a lesson in the A, B, and C frames for cover, etc. But there was no talk about what the average citizen needed to focus on in carrying and protecting themselves. So it was just weird to have this kind of disjointed class, and then he's got this attitude against competition.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of going back to the fact that, to most people that I trust, look up to, that are mentors, believe that competition in everything from jiu-jitsu, shooting, anything that you can do is going to be beneficial, even if you're not 100% into it, trying to be a professional, etc. So, I wanted to talk about what you feel the importance of competition is for every shooter, every type of shooter. Could you maybe touch on that?
Sure. I mean, I definitely am a strong believer, and a 100% advocate on indulging in competition, especially, with the shooting sports. Most of all, I mean, regardless of your actual interest in competing, it's a great way to test your skill set under some acknowledged pressure, right? And that's something that you don't get to do. A lot of guys are like, well, you go to the range and you use a timer. A timer will give you all the pressure that you need. Well, but it doesn't. It doesn't give you the pressure that you do when, you're shooting on a squad of 12 to 15 other people, and you're in kind of direct competition with particular shooters. You're trying to do your best. And you get one opportunity to do it. Whereas, like if you're out on the range, I mean, I use a timer exclusively when I'm on the range, almost for everything that I do. And the timer does give you a little bit of pressure, but not like knowing when you go to a match and you shoot a match, you've got one chance to do your absolute very best. Like there's no do-overs, right? So I feel like a lot of that does relate to, let's say, to judicious use of a firearm. In a defensive situation, you don't get multiple attempts. Like the multiple attempts come with practice to make you better, so that in that most important fight for your life, that I hope that nobody ever has to go through, they're able to perform at a level that allows them to to kind of win the day. And nothing really else out there other than competition is going to give that to you, with the exception of certain force on force, types of scenarios and things like that. And it's definitely not to detract from force on force. But the problem with force on force is you've got to generally travel a long distance to find an instructor that teaches force on force. The equipment for that is, pretty expensive. It's not like you're just going to go out and go buy a case of, little blue pills or whatever for for a blue gun, to run your own force on force scenarios and things like that. And then you also need people to, to kind of role play the different situations. Whereas in competition, you can find a match almost any day of the week, any evening of the week, or any weekend within a 30-minute to an hour and a half drive of your house, and be able to shoot in anything from Steel Challenge to IDPA to USPSA to, even remote outlaw matches, someplace to at least kind of dip a toe in the water. And it gives you an opportunity to kind of, like I said, to test your mettle, how good you are, on a one and done kind of course of fire, and also to be able to pressure test your equipment. How good is my holster? How good is my mag pouches? How good is my pistol with a less than, a subpar grip? How good am I at being able to align the sights when I have to lean around, a hard wall or a barricade, or I have to shoot between targets, or, I have to do other things that are being time pressure tested. And that's where, I mean, if you're advocating that we shouldn't, and I'm not meaning you, I'm talking, if you're an instructor and you're advocating that, that you shouldn't pursue competition in some way, shape, or form. I mean, I hate to say it, but kind of get with the times, because you're doing it wrong,
Oh yeah. And I would say definitely that it's a red flag to me to not spend any time or money with those individuals. But you know what? That's not a big deal, because in if you just want to talk about, let's say, the range master world, everybody, let's say that teaches at TACCon, or all this world of like-minded people, I can't really think of anybody that doesn't advocate competition. It really just seems. It really just seems to be the local guys,
you got to
like
think
I was
about, I
saying.
mean, Tom Givens, was like, I want to say he's life member of IDPA. He's like life member number 4. The IDPA target as it exists right now, currently, with the 8-inch circle for the center mass of the chest, with, that, I mean, that was all kind of picked out and designed by guys like, Bill Wilson, Ken Ackathorn, Tom Givens, who were the originators of IDPA. I mean, and Tom not only obviously has a very, very, prominent background, as a law enforcement, and retired, law enforcement with Memphis PD for, Jesus, what, 180 some years. I don't know how old Tom is. He's
A while.
71 now. Right. But at the same time, I mean, he was one of the kind of the grandfathers of, kind of what is modern day competition with IDPA. So, I mean, when you've got the majority of shooters that even go and teach, or instructors that go and teach at the tactical conference every year, have competed in some way, shape, or form, or do currently compete, that kind of tells you a lot about, whether or not it's important for you as an individual, again, to kind of pressure test your skill set. And there's no better way to do it.
Hey, and speaking of, you're reminding me, of course, of the competition at TACCon.
Sure.
Now, which was a lot of fun. I'm glad I got to shoot it. I didn't make it up there in the top 16, not even close. But hey, it was a blast getting to be a part of it, and seeing all you guys, put your skills right there, in front of everybody too. I mean, that must have been a lot of pressure too.
So no, it's always good, and the great thing about even that little particular, kind of small match there at TACCon is it gives me an opportunity from a guy that actually shoots, obviously, primarily a lot of gun games and competitive shooting, to kind of pressure test my skill set, from appendix, from a concealment, with a gun that I probably don't, I spend a lot of time carrying it, but I don't spend as much time training with it as I do, obviously, my competition guns. And it's a great way to be able to pressure test and say, like, see, even though I don't spend, a majority of my time with my carry gun, as far as training with it, I'm still able to compete at a very, very high level, even with my competition, or I'm sorry, with my carry rig, because of the fact that I spend a lot of time shooting competition and training, and just training and getting time behind a gun, period, is extremely valuable.
Well, I like to explain it to people that have not gotten into competition, dip their toes into it. To me, one of the key issues is that I really can't think of a better way to hone gun handling skills, manipulation of the firearm, safety, muzzle awareness, just so many things. To me, I feel like it's not the exact same as going to the range and focusing on a handful of drills for the day, or
Right.
two or three like we normally would. But to me, I feel like I have shot, 3 times at the range every time I shoot one match.
Mhm.
Maybe even more than that. And to me, that's one of the biggest benefits, especially for newer shooters. And I try and explain to some of my friends that are not serious shooters, and they do want to get better, but they're scared to go compete, like everybody, not scared, but
Sure.
intimidated. They want to get better before they go. But then, you go to a local match, there are literally people that walk and pop, pop,
Right.
pop. And then there's pros at local matches,
Mhm.
right? Everyone is there, and every single one of those people wants you there, no matter how good you are,
Oh,
right?
exactly.
I try to get that across. Sometimes it feels like people are like, yeah, 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 I hear you, but I don't.
Well, the thing about competition, right? So, I mean, it gives you an added benefit, obviously, of more time behind the gun. It gives you an opportunity also to learn how to problem solve, with a gun in the hand. So, like how to figure out particular kind of situations. You're presented with a problem or a puzzle.
Hmm.
If in just in kind of gamesmanship speak, you're presented
Hmm.
with a puzzle, and it's your job to solve that puzzle as best as you possibly can. With a pistol in hand. So I think every skill set really is tested. Shooting from odd positions, movement with the pistol. How you address each array. With the pistol. How good you can grip the gun for an extended period of time, how good your shot splits are, how good your shot calling is, how good your transitions are, moving the gun or shooting target to target and transitioning the gun. All of those things are tested in a competition. I will say though, kind of the caveat to that though is a competition is not practice, nor should it replace a practice session. Right.
Hmm.
But what a competition will do is it exploits weaknesses that you may have in your own shooting, right? Just like a test does. So if you think all the way back to like high school, and when you think about high school, your first day of a class in a semester, the teacher might give you a pop quiz, and the pop quiz may not make any sense to you at all, but you're taking a quiz so that the teacher so that you can also kind of determine your knowledge beforehand on a particular subject before you dive into it for the semester to study it, right?
Hmm.
Think about competition as doing exactly that same thing. Going to your first competition is going to exploit both your strengths and your weaknesses. It's going to allow you to be able to find out, okay, where am I good and where am I not so good, so that you can take the things that you're not so good on, and it empowers you to then be able to take those things and go back to your own practice, whether it be both in dry fire as well as in live fire, to practice those particular things to improve upon those, so that then the next time that you go to a match, right, then you're testing yourself or quizzing yourself again on all of the homework that you have done and studying, to get better, or to improve yourself within those things that you're being tested on. And every week or every month, depending on how many matches that you go to, kind of you're being tested on different particulars that allow you then, of course, to take that information and take it back home with you to then further study and practice at, right? And that's how we get good. The matches are tests so that we can start evaluating ourselves better and studying better for those tests, both in dry fire and live fire. When we go to the range to just practice, we know what to practice, how to practice, and why we're practicing the things that we are, right? So now we have purpose to our practice so that we can start to implicit, improvement in ourselves. And that's what competition gives us, that no amount of classes, no amount of force on force, no amount of these other things that we hear all the time. And I mean, you and I both know multitudes of folks that are like class junkies. They'll spend $400 or $500 to go take a 2-day class, and they'll shoot 300 or 400 rounds or 500 or 600 rounds, or hell, even 1,000 rounds in a 2-day or 3-day class, and basically kind of fib to themselves and say, yep, I got better. I'm a much better shooter because of this class than I was beforehand. And I would challenge that you didn't probably get better from the instruction or from the class. You got better simply from the repetition of shooting, a multitude number of rounds over a, kind of an extended period of time. Now, granted, you are, with instruction, or classes, you are getting, I hope, with a particular instructor, you're being able to hit on the things that you need most, and that instructor is able to kind of deep dive along with you to kind of give you some guidance and leadership into where you yourself need to improve. But the class doesn't make you better. The class just gives you an education. It's what you do with that education outside of the class, whether it be in your own dry fire, your own live fire, or even in attending matches, that allows you to start implementing the things that you've learned in a class to get better.
Well, and I like that you brought up the issue with classes. And yeah, I mean, I think both of us fall into that category of being class junkies, right? I mean, you just don't live in this world without at least having that in your DNA. But after TACCON, my brother and I both said, you know what? We've been taking quite a few classes these last couple of years. We need to simply take a break from classes. Depends on what type of class, but especially shooting. Okay, just shooting classes. We're going to take a break, and we're going to really digest and test and work out all these things we've learned from these great instructors over the last year and a half. And so I am doing that, and I'm focusing, like I said, I'm starting this focus on competition, trying to hit a match about every week. And and it literally was my first match back after not being able to shoot for 3.5 months, and then not having been at a match for about 5 months. And I went to that match and instantly thought, okay, I have a few areas that I can focus on right now that will make huge dividends in my competition, right? In how well I do. And the number one thing I went away with was my single hand shooting. I know that's kind of trite, but I can perform pretty well with two hands. I can move fairly well. I can negotiate the parts of the puzzle, and it also has to do with my grip strength because of my neck. I lost a lot of strength, but I could probably class up just by getting my, not probably, I know I could class up if I just improve my single hand shooting.
Sure.
So right now, when I go to the range, I'm spending at least half of my rounds on single-handed shooting. I mean, man, it's frustrating, but it's especially, you're left-handed, but on my left hand, it's so foreign. And it's like, it just feels so uncomfortable just to even get the finger right on the trigger, right? Even though in a competition, I may be down. I think the last stage I was in that was a standard stage in IDPA that was all single-handed shooting. I think I was only down 2 points. For me, that was awesome. But at the same time, it was fairly slow and still uncomfortable. But that's one of those things, like you said, you go there, you figure out what you need to work on, and then it may be something like that is a vast difference between your skill sets. And so, I'm excited about that. But I did want to. So you got to forgive me, Tim. You're in Arizona, also, right?
I'm in New Mexico.
New Mexico. I knew it was close to there, at least in my mind, going through those places. But so a lot of people know, and I've talked about it here, Oklahoma is actually a great place if you want to be a competitor.
Mhm.
There's, like you said, now there may not, I'm curious exactly how many, your take again. I think you mentioned it. There's just lots of matches going on. But yeah, here, there's probably 3 matches going on every weekend within an hour, within usually about 30 minutes from me. Then I can go about an hour.
Right.
And then there's some in another state in Arkansas that's 2 hours away.
Hmm.
So between all those, and then I just found out there's a practical rifle competition, not just PCC, but I can go out and compete with my AR. I'm looking forward to trying that out too.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, there's just so many opportunities to shoot here or compete here. But like where Eric lives, for some reason, right there around Fort Bragg or Fort Liberty, they call it now.
Hmm.
There's not that much opportunity. So you're saying there's near you, there's quite a bit of competition going on,
Just
competition
about
culture.
anywhere I've lived. I'm, the majority of my life I spent in Kansas City, so about
Mm-hmm.
4 hours north of Tulsa,
Mm-hmm.
Kansas City, Missouri. And in Kansas City, I could shoot every Tuesday night at an indoor match. I could shoot every Friday night at an indoor match. I could shoot just about every Saturday at an outdoor match. And then I think like the third or fourth Sunday of the month, there was also an outdoor match at a different club that was on a Sunday. So, I mean, all in all, I could shoot about 3 times a week, different days of the week, and shoot competitively. I chose not to do that because I think too many people, they get the bug a little bit. They're like, oh, I'm going to compete. And they go and they shoot one match, and it becomes so fun that they shoot nothing but matches, and
Mm-hmm.
matches become a replacement for their actual, range or practice time. And I feel like if you're doing that, you need to take a break from matches and maybe pick 1 or 2 of those matches a month that you really enjoy shooting, that you feel have the best benefit of testing you. And then the
Mm-hmm.
rest of the time spend on a range, once a week or so, going to the range and just practicing or focusing your attention on, 1 or 2 aspects of your shooting that you've deemed necessary that need work. But yeah, I mean, here in New Mexico now, I've been here 5 years, and I could shoot an IDPA match almost every week. I could shoot a USPSA match every other week. There's also there's a couple of outlaw matches I can shoot that are like twice a month. I'm sorry, twice a month on the USPSA matches too. Twice a month on outlaw matches, and then I could shoot an indoor match, whether it be an outlaw or a USPSA style match,
Mm-hmm.
about once a week or once every couple of weeks as well. So, and granted, I'm not home enough to be able to compete, to that level anymore.
Mm-hmm.
With my travel schedule and teaching schedule, I'm good if I get to shoot. I think this year I'll have shot 7 major matches and
Mm-hmm.
maybe 3 local matches
Mm-hmm.
throughout the entire year. So maybe a total of like 10 matches, kind of across the country.
Well, but for a lot of people, that's a heck of a lot still. And in between your shooting, right? I mean,
Sure.
your instruction and you're maintaining skills too. Like for me, my focus, I think realistically, I'll be able to hit a match every week.
Hmm.
And not, excuse me, every week, but I'm probably going to only hit about 3 matches a month. But it's because I see how much quicker I'm going to be able to. I just need more exposure to all the problems that you need to solve,
Sure.
so I don't get hit with PEs.
Right.
Oh, I forgot about that. Oh, here you go, Aaron. 3 points down or 5.
Right.
Whatever. But so it it is really cool. Sometimes I feel like I rub it in my brother's face, about how many competitions I can go to. But you know, I guess it would be a good time to talk about. Well, I almost skipped this. Two things. Do you have like a mini mantra or anything like that you say or think about right before the buzzer? And um, what's your process of visualization?
So yeah, I mean, I do have a mantra that or kind of a mission statement that I, both I repeat over and over and over. And it's also what I consciously think about, or consciously focus on, every time I step up to a stage to shoot. And that is
Hmm.
simply grip the gun and manage the sights. If I don't tell myself to grip the gun, then Lord knows I won't grip the gun very well.
Hmm.
Managing the sights for me, a lot of people are like, grip the gun, see the sights, or, aim for every shot. And for me, aiming or seeing the sights doesn't tell me enough like what visually managing the sights mean. So for me, you need to find a kind of a statement or a mantra that you can speak that speaks volumes to you about like what it is that you truly need to focus your attention on. So gripping the gun is one of them, because without gripping the gun, I can't manage the sights very well. But managing the sights to me, kind of implies obviously seeing a sight picture, an acceptable, not an exceptional, but an acceptable sight picture for every single time that I press the trigger. So whether we're talking 50-yard steel or we're talking 3-yard paper targets, I need to see the sights in some way, shape, or form for every single press of the trigger to ensure that I can call every shot and know that every shot that I'm sending down range is an acceptable shot and an accountable shot. So that's kind of the mantra that I speak to myself, and kind of go over and over and over in my head, even as I'm shooting a course of fire. And as far as visualization, it really just kind of depends on the stage. But for the visualization sequence, I need to walk the course, or walk the stage a couple of times to be able to know where all the targets are at and from which position I'm going to shoot each of the target arrays from. Once I can do that, and I'll walk the stage, enough times to be able to kind of memorize exactly where I want to go, how I need to get there, and in which order I'm going to shoot the stage or shoot the targets. Then I will come off the stage and I'll turn a face uprange and I'll close my eyes and
Hmm.
I will play back in full detail every single aspect of that stage run, both in first person as well as kind of what it looks like from like third person point of view, you know. And then if there's a particular target, and for me, the visualization goes in depth to the point where I need to be able to visualize and see every spot on the ground that I plan on getting my feet to, every spot on every single target that I plan to superimpose the sights to before I press the trigger, how the sights are going to lift and how the sights are going to return to that same spot on the target for the second shot. What targets have no shoots on them, what targets have hardcover on them, what targets are partial targets or open targets, how aggressively I plan on shooting each of those targets. All of those things are kind of like you go through the mental gymnastics to ensure that no time is left behind when you're shooting the stage. And then if for some reason I can't visualize, I close my eyes and visualize that entire process, I go back and I walk the stage again. And I go back and walk the stage again to pick up those little pieces that I might have dropped someplace in my mind that I had a hard time. Okay, was that the no shoot target? Was that on the left side of that array, or was it right in the middle of that array? And I'll go back and look at it again. Oh, okay, that was the second target on the inside left of that array. Okay, then I go back and I close my eyes and I visualize the stage again. And I need to be able to visualize it in that great a detail every single time before I step up to the plate and then shoot the stage. And then two shooters or so before it's my turn to shoot. So like when I'm the shooter, they call in the hole, right? So you'll have like
Hmm.
Aaron is our shooter, Eric is on deck, and Tim is in the hole. So like when Aaron is the shooter, and I know Eric, let's say your brother was the on deck shooter,
Hmm.
I am not going to go down range and paste when I'm the
Hmm.
in the hole shooter. It's time for me to make sure that all of my equipment is accounted for, all my magazines have the requisite number of rounds they need to have in them. That I can close my eyes again. I'm going to visualize every single position on the stage, every target on the stage, how I'm going to engage every position on the stage. And then, of course, by then you've gotten done shooting. Eric is now, he's the next shooter. He's up now. I'm the on deck shooter. And again, when I'm the on deck shooter, after Eric would finish his run, now I get one last walkthrough, and I'm going to walk through that stage. And as I'm walking through, physically walking through the stage, I'm getting a mental image as well as a true visual image of, okay, is that spot that I have so hardly visualized, does it look exactly the same when I actually get to that spot and, put all of these different arrays and pieces of the puzzle together? And if it does, awesome. Now I go back, I await instructions from the RO. The RO, it will tell me, of course, if you got no questions, load and make ready. So that's my time to go ahead and load the gun, make it ready, and then put the gun back in the holster. And then before I take my hands off the gun and put myself in that full ready position, I'm running through that stage one more time, fully visualizing every single target and every array as I see it in my mind. And then, of course, then I open my eyes. I kind of stare a gaze off it in whatever direction I'm going first, or whatever target I plan on engaging first. And then I relax my hands down at sides, or, raise my hands above shoulders, or whatever the case may be. And I await, are you ready? Stand by, and the beep. And then on the beep, it just becomes execute kind of at a subconscious level what you visualized throughout your walkthroughs and throughout your visualization procedure. And then the only thing that I am consciously thinking about is, again, gripping the gun, managing the sights, gripping the gun, managing the sights, so that I'm ensuring that I'm giving the same visual focus and importance to every single, or priority to every single target on the stage.
So I keyed in on something that you said. Of course, most people I know, of course, I think even they'll say that sometimes at matches. Hey, if you're on deck or in the hole, yeah, you don't need to be out there pasting.
Right.
But I'm assuming what you're talking about, you're walking through when everybody's pasting. Assuming that, is that correct?
If I'm the on deck shooter, so if I'm the shooter that's getting ready to shoot, yes, then I walk the stage one more time. If I am two shooters back from being the shooter on deck, no, I'm either pasting or I'm back in the back visualizing. It's not my prerogative to walk the stage. It's the shooter that's on deck. It's that's his stage to walk at that time.
Yeah. So I'm going to have to try and sneak that in, because I don't think I've ever noticed any, I've only been at local matches, and I went to state once, but I definitely, I don't think I've noticed people kind of, maybe they are, and they're just being more sneaky about it. I don't know. But I will say this, interject this, a friend of mine that's been around here, and pretty good high level shooter himself, a guy named Eric Fusion.
Mm-hmm.
He puts on he built a range, and he's been putting on matches. I went to my first match at his place a couple weeks ago.
Mm-hmm.
And what was cool is usually local matches, they don't provide the stages beforehand. But Eric, being at least semi-professional shooter, he's used to that. So he provides at least, the match layouts and everything in their little PDF forms. Man, I love that. Now, are you usually able to get that at most of the matches you go
at
to?
Major matches, yes. Local matches, no. At major matches, though, I pay no attention to them.
Oh, okay.
I think it's for me personally, it's a waste of resources, because the stages as they look on a book or on a piece of paper are not how the stages look when you get to the local match or whatever and get ready to shoot them. So the only thing I look for, like in a match book, it would possibly be if there's any kind of oddball start positions. Is it a seated start? Is it an unloaded start? Is it the mags are gun on table or starting on barrels? Or, do you get to start with the gun loaded and holstered and your hands relaxed at sides? Are you facing up range? Is it going to be a turning draw? Things like that. Other than that, I don't pay much attention to the stage briefings. You'll see a lot of guys that'll come out, with like a stack of paper in their hand, and they're drawing little pencil marks of, okay, this is how I'm going to shoot this way. And then, oh, yep. So they've ahead of time, they've looked at their entire map and they've mapped out how they think they're going to shoot every single stage. Yet then when they get to the match, they'll look at it and they'll be like, this this doesn't even look the same. It's like, well, of course it doesn't look the same. So don't spend a whole lot of brain power trying to break down stages on a piece of paper, because when you see them in like full, 3-dimension, they're going to look completely different than what they look like in 1 dimension or 2 dimension on paper.
Yeah. And one thing to note, that there was one where it was a bunch of partial targets, and you had to shoot around these same targets around a few cover positions, and it seems like they had them at like in the match. What'd you call them?
The written stage briefing, right?
Yeah. In that, I think the targets were like 15 yards away, which of course is pretty spicy in some stages, especially with partial targets. But when I got there, I think the targets were like 7 yards away.
Right.
so big difference, because I went in there thinking, man, this one's going to be a challenging stage. And it was actually one of my best stages because it was a little easier than I had thought it would be. But
right, you can't judge distances based on anything in a written stage briefing too. So they typically don't give you like what the distances of the targets are. So if you see something and the targets look small, you might perceive that as like, oh, that target's going to be way far away. Well, no, it's just the computer program that they use to just throw some targets out there on the piece of paper to make them, to give you a stage brief. Like I said, I don't put any thought into those things at all. I'd rather not kind of muddy up my brain with trying to think ahead of time what the stages are going to look like, because I don't want to come to a match with a preconceived notion that something is hard or something is easy.
Man, that sounds like a good tip. I bet you talk about that in your clinic.
I do.
Well, so then there are some competitors. I'm not going to name his name because he's got me pissed off recently, but that are down on IDPA, or they only like IDPA or USPSA. What are your thoughts on that? Do you have a favorite match style? Or?
Well, I primarily have shot USPSA for a number of years. That's really where kind of my background stems from. But I'm also an IDPA master. I've been shooting IDPA matches. I think it really is going to be dependent on the kind of the location of where you live and what the matches in your area consist of. So in Kansas City, we had one IDPA club within like a 2 or 3 hour drive. So it just didn't make any sense to go pursue a lot of IDPA matches, because the predominant discipline to shoot was USPSA. Fast forward then, of course, 5 years, later, 5 years ago, I moved to New Mexico, and New Mexico, is more predominantly IDPA focused here in Albuquerque, and not so much USPSA focused. Now we've seen a shift kind of over the last like 3 or 4 years, where USPSA is starting to pick up the pace, so to speak, over the IDPA crowd. But IDPA is still a kind of a higher priority of focus for a lot of the competitive shooters in this area, with USPSA kind of being secondary. So I get to shoot probably more IDPA matches than I do USPSA matches here if I chose to. Like I said, my preference is still USPSA, but I still I shoot IDPA matches as well. I think they can test. They can offer the same kind of tests that a USPSA match can, albeit with a little less freedom. Whereas in USPSA, you're basically given a stage, and then it's up to you to kind of solve the entire problem. Whereas in IDPA, you're given a stage, and then the range safety officers will tell you which order you need to shoot which targets in, and you have to slice the pie. You have to do this. You have to shoot these targets in tactical sequence, and some of those things I think are a little gimmicky, a little gamey. They kind of hold shooters back, so to speak. But I think IDPA is probably the best. It's probably the best intro matches to get people involved in, because it requires the least amount of equipment, and it's the easiest to kind of navigate through a match. Whereas USPSA can be a little overwhelming to new shooters. They see guys with 5 or 6 magazines on their belt, and giant magwells and compensators and red dots and all kinds of other gear. and athletic shoes, and everybody's wearing the moisture wicking jerseys with a bunch of colors and things like that on them. So it becomes a little overwhelming a lot of times for a new shooter to go to a USPSA match, and then they step up on a 16 target 32 round array field course, and they go, yeah, I'm not for sure what to do first here. Whereas an IDPA, there's a few more limits in place to kind of make it a little bit more digestible for newer shooters as well. So, but yeah, no, I to be honest, I really don't have like a preference per se. I love this more than I do that. I do like USPSA, I think, a little bit more just because of the freedom. But again, I like IDPA as well because it's more conclusive for newer shooters at an earlier start.
Well, I can see that, and it's funny here when Eric and I first started competing. I wasn't even aware of any USPSA matches, so yeah, it was all IDPA, and so that's what we naturally went into. And I'll tell you, I've never shot a USPSA match yet. As I literally yesterday grabbed one of my moleskin notebooks and got on practice score and started looking at all the matches in my area and writing out a calendar to decide where I could go. And I doubt it'll be more than a month before I hit my first USPSA match. Excellent. But I know I need to do a little research. So again, I don't feel overwhelmed going in there.
I will say the Tulsa folks, especially Chad Stanton and Kelly Ragland, those guys have been super supportive and help match direct all of the Tulsa level matches out at USSA, at US Shooting Academy there. Yep. I've known Chad and Kelly and a lot of those guys, in the Tulsa area for a number of years. Also to include like Eric Fusen, Mike Seeklander, who is obviously one of my most near and dear friends as well as mentors. Mike used to be the director of training at US Shooting Academy for a number of years, and has competed in the Tulsa area for, forever. And so, yeah, you've got some great talent there to really build some great stages and learn a lot from the sport from, just in that area.
Yeah, it is pretty amazing. I know there's great shooters all over the place, but I kind of feel like we've got some extra special guys around here. I may be wrong, but there's a lot of people to learn from, and of course that love making sure people have matches. So So does Kelly Ragland still run the USPSA?
I don't know if Kelly does. I know Chad Stanton was there for a long time. He was also the Area 4 director for USPSA for a number of years. I think he's since stepped down, but I know he still shoots locally there in Tulsa and helps out a lot with the Tulsa matches there at USSA.
Good deal. Well, and USSA is my range. I literally, what's cool is I work a mile from the range.
Oh, that's awesome.
So lately, I've just been at 9 p.m., 10 p.m. at night loading mags, and I'll run down there at lunch, and not a ton of rounds, but I'll have some solid goals of what I want to work on and go through 200 rounds, well spent rounds on my lunch hour. And that saves me the hour-long drive back and forth, which isn't a big deal. But, man, it's really cool being able to go down there at lunch. And like I said, I literally did it yesterday.
Yeah, absolutely.
But, and, man, that's a great range, too. It is. I assume that it's at least from a amount of bays, it has to be one of the better ranges in the country.
Well, they held USPSA nationals there a few times. They've also held the Area 4 championships there multiple times. The Oklahoma State Championships, USPSA state championships were held there, or possibly still are held there. The USSA has been a pretty big range for a number of years.
I believe maybe about 3 years ago they had IDPA nationals there too. So yeah, there's a lot going on there. Well, that's interesting. It is nice when people are more open minded because the whole closed minded thing in all of this stuff just gets old,
Agreed.
But, um, so man, let's go ahead and talk some fun stuff. We've got some some learn on with your competition, skills and suggestions and I'm telling you, I'm going to listen back to this and put it all in my head. But I do want to say this. It's funny. I think so many shooters, even I'm just a decent local match guy, but that my mantra has been recently, literally, grip the gun hard and pace yourself,
Right.
because and the reason why is lately I'm trying to outrun myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and you can tell me if you think that I'm holding myself back by doing that, but I mid match, I reminded myself of those two things, and I shot the second half of the match as good as I've ever shot a second half of a match or a whole match. But I think that mantra may change a little bit as I get better. But I think that I just find it very interesting. The grip the gun thing, I think, is always gonna be in there.
Sure.
Because it's like a lot of technical things fall from that grip,
Right.
or flow from the grip. So that's cool. Well, so let's geek a little bit about gear, because man, you've always got some badass pistols, and sometimes share pictures of some that I'm just real jealous about. But so what's your current favorite pistol to shoot these days?
Gosh, I've spent probably the most time behind my Nighthawk double stack gun. So I've got a Nighthawk signature double stack, a 2011 style pistol, 9mm, with a Holosun 507 comp that I've had on it now for a bit. That's probably been the gun that I've spent the most time behind this season. I've shot 3 area matches, USPSA, area like national level matches with it, and just got back from area. What match was I just shooting? Area 8 in Pennsylvania, and also Illinois sectional that same weekend. So I flew out to Onalani, Pennsylvania, shot Area 8, and then flew to Illinois, and then shot the Illinois sectional, and then flew home. Illinois sectional I did really, really well on. The Area 8 match I finished second overall in limited optics, and then in Illinois I won limited optics there, so I won the championship.
Rock
there.
On.
That's been the gun, like I said, that's been my go-to this year. I just put it back in the safe now to focus all of my attention on USPSA single stack nationals, which is coming up towards the end of October, middle of October. So I basically got the month of September to really train up and kind of get back in the saddle again with a single stack 1911s. And so like my go-to gun now is one of my Nighthawk 9mm 1911s. I'll be shooting single stack minor in. And so I've just spent 2 days on the range the last couple of days here at home, practicing, kind of getting back, like I said, kind of getting back on the saddle again. Reloads galore, focusing on one-handed shooting, strong-handed support hand only. And then just getting comfortable behind that pistol again with iron sights. So.
Yeah, that's what I was going to ask you. I was assuming that it was an iron sight.
It is
gun, and is that all? That sounds like it's always the case with single stack nationals.
Single stack, you're only allowed, a single stack is only allowed like 1911 pattern pistols, and they're not allowed to have any kind of ports or compensators or anything like that on it. And you're not allowed any kind of optic or electronic sights on them. It has to be iron sights.
Well, yesterday I brought out my very old, beat up, ugly duckling Glock 17 that I've had about 20 years, and it only has irons on it. Well, you may have heard me talk about the fact that I have synthetic lenses now, and I had to go to all red dots on my carry guns,
Mhm.
because indoors it's irresponsible for me to rely on irons. But yesterday was the first time I shot irons in 2 years, and man, I was kind of like, man, I was actually shooting better
Mhm.
than with my dot, and it made me think, you know what? I think I may be over confirming with my dot or
Oh,
something.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. As most people
it,
do.
interesting. But I came away thinking, man, I can't see these sights near as well, but I'm shooting it better. But it's like, hello, old friend. I'm gonna. I think the next match I go to, I may shoot irons, or for the practice, shoot carry optics, and then maybe ESP or something,
Yeah.
just so I can run irons. Now, okay, so you brought up the Holosun 507 comp.
Mhm.
I've texted you a couple times about that, I think. So what reticle, I'm curious, are you using on that one?
So believe it or not, I've been pretty well adhering to just the two MOA dot on
Oh,
that one.
wow.
Yeah. Um, just and so my the majority of my reasoning is because I think on the 507 competition, they're asking the emitter to do too many functions. So they've
Mm.
got the 8 MOA ring, they've got the 20 MOA ring, and they've got the 32 MOA ring and the 2 MOA dot, and then a combination of the dots and the rings and the rings and the rings and everything else. And unfortunately, the rings themselves tend to ghost image. So it's like I'll have a hard
Mm.
ring and then kind of just off to the side, slightly different image of a ring that's kind of more faded, kind of a ghosting image
Oh, wow.
behind that. So and it's been that way with just about every 507 comp that I've picked up. And so it's just been one of those things where it's like, you know what? I need as little I kind of need as little visual noise as possible. So I've just been working with the 2MOA dot and just kind of running the dot, and I run the dot with at a very low setting um, to uh, to basically make it almost as translucent as I can, so that I'm
Interesting.
not drawn visually to looking at the dot. I'm able to just look through it.
That's what I was about to ask. It sounds like that could help someone like me that may be over confirming.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Interesting. Now, and I think that, doesn't the SRO have kind of a ghosting thing that can happen too? Or
Not that I've seen. I ran an SRO for the first 5 months, 6 months with that gun in limited optics, and ran this just the 2.5 MOA SRO, and it was a super crystal clear, precise dot. The only thing about that is like I prefer a green dot more so than a red dot,
mm,
and the SROs you can't get it in anything but red.
mm,
But no, I mean, I never really had any issues with the SRO. The only thing with the SRO that you can get is because of how the glass sits at a really really steep angle in the in the optic frame. It's susceptible to picking up sunlight and reflecting sunlight that gives you a ghost image when you're
yeah,
aiming the gun into
that's what I
something
read
with
about.
sunlight.
You, thanks for refreshing my memory on exactly what the deal was with
Yeah,
that. Well, Tim, fun conversation.
definitely.
I'm you got to see how many notes I've written down
That's
here,
awesome.
and because I mean, this is my focus now, and it's awesome being able to contact someone like you, and hey, selfishly have you on my show to pick your brain about my new periodization focus as
Mhm.
in competition. So, man, thanks again for coming on. It's a blast talking to you. You're very giving of your knowledge, and that means a lot to me and our listeners.
Well, thank you.
Now, before we let you go, I need to ask you to tell the listeners where they can get a hold of you.
So yeah, I mean, the best way to get a hold of me, honestly, is through my website, which is timherronshooting.com. Pretty simple. I've also got a YouTube channel, and I like to give away a lot of free, free milk or free knowledge, so to speak, on my YouTube channel, which is also Tim Herron Shooting. I'm on Instagram at Tim Herron Shooting. You see the trend here. as well as, of course, just via Facebook, either Tim Herron, which is my personal page, or Tim Herron Shooting as well. But yeah, I try to be the most accessible person I can, as far as, from an instructor or a coach. And I love to geek out. I love to talk knowledge. I love to share things, and love to help people. Is my number one goal, is helping everybody become a better shooter. So.
Oh yeah. And you know what the cool thing is? I've found that the more giving I am of whatever I am helpful with,
Mm-hmm.
the more I somehow get surrounded by guys like you and Mike Seaclander, Mike Brown, and my favorite guitar players and stuff. It just goes on. If you're giving, man, it's amazing how many people you run into that are giving of their help. It's pretty damn cool.
Does.
Well, brother, you have a good evening, and have a safe flight out tomorrow. I believe you said you're heading to North Carolina.
Nope, I'm heading to Los Angeles. So I'll be in LA throughout the entire Labor Day weekend. So I'll fly out there tomorrow. I think I get in around noon or 1, and I'm teaching a 2-day class on Saturday, Sunday, and then a follow-up 2-day class on Monday and Tuesday before heading home for a single day on Wednesday, and then flying back out again on Thursday to West Virginia to teach a match skills clinic on Friday and a 2-day practical performance class on Saturday and Sunday. So, yep, it's August, September, and October are very, very, very busy months for me.
Oh, awesome. Well, buddy, you have a good evening. And again, thanks for coming on. And Eric, he's going to get mad at me if I didn't say anything. Eric said to tell you hi, and he's sorry he didn't get to
please tell him I said hello as well. And Aaron, thank you for everything, guys. I appreciate it.
All right, buddy. Good night.
Good night.